Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to dose Kalkwasser the easy way. Hi guys, welcome back. So a few weeks ago I was chatting with my friend Ash from Ash's Reef, and we were talking about Kalkwasser, and he gave me the idea for doing this little video about how I use Kalkwasser in my Red Sea Reefer 250. So I think Kalkwasser is a great product. It's good for maintaining your calcium and your alkalinity. It's also good for boosting your tank's pH. And one of the easiest way to use it is to put the Kalkwasser powder directly in the water reservoir for your top off. So what I'm going to do for this video is just give you a few helpful tips about how I use Kalkwasser in my system, what to do, what not to do, and also some disadvantages of using Kalkwasser in your ATO. Okay, one of my first tips is safety. Kalkwasser, also known as calcium hydroxide, is an irritant and could be corrosive. So I use gloves, nitrile gloves, but you could use any plastic gloves when you're dealing with it. Also, you don't want to inhale the powder. So I either work with it outside or I use a dust mask, the same one that you would use if you're sanding. I also like to use safety goggles, just to kind of make sure that my eyes are protected. Okay, my favorite tip for using Kalkwasser is to try to pre-measure the calc that you're going to use and make it ahead of time. So what I typically use is these 50 mil conical tubes, which you could buy off Amazon's. I have about 50 of these, and every 3 or 4 months I just go outside and get my protective equipment on, and I have my spoon here, measuring spoon, and a funnel. And what I do here is aliquot about 25 mils, that's approximately 5 teaspoons of Kalkwasser into each tube. And I fill up 50 tubes at a time. And I have it all ready now, so it's ready to go. I don't have to make it on the spot. I don't have to worry about the powder spilling everywhere. Whenever I need to make a new top-off jug of water, I just take one of these tubes and empty it in a jug, and voila, I'm ready to go. You don't have to use these tubes. I mean, they make the job easier. You could use Tupperware, you could use Ziploc baggies, but I find these tubes very, very helpful. So here's an example of the jugs that I use for my top off. This is a 5-gallon jug, which you could get from most fish aquarium stores. And so for dosing calc, the general rule is you don't want to go any more than 2 teaspoons per gallon. And that's a lot of calc. So normally you want to start a lot lower than this and bring the levels up. But the maximum calc that you could dissolve in a gallon is 2 teaspoons. I do about half that dosage. I put 1 teaspoon per gallon. And so I have my water ready, and whenever I want to add the calc to it, I'll show you in a second, I just open up the container and I put in the liquid, I put in the calc that I just aliquoted right directly in the water. Okay, so when you're ready to use the calc, you just unscrew your container, unscrew the container of the Kalkwasser, and there it goes. You just put the powder right in the water. I shake the powder out for a little bit, and that's it. When you're done, you cap your jug. And to mix the calc, I don't do anything fancy. I just lift the container and I just give it a few shakes and let it settle, and that's it. And so it's easy as pie. You now have your jug ready to go. I typically have about 2 or 3 of these ready to go, and whenever one is done, I just bring it upstairs to the tank and swap them out. Now, you will end up with some undissolved solids in the bottom of this container. These are often inert, so I don't worry too much about them. What I try to do is when I add my osmolator pump, which you'll see in a second, I essentially try to place it on its side, so that way it's not sucking directly from the bottom, and that will keep all of the calc solids that are sitting on the bottom in the bottom and not in your tank. So when I'm ready, I just add my osmolator pump here and I screw in the cap, and voila, the calc is ready to go. Another important tip when you're using Kalkwasser is you are going to get calcium deposit on the tubing and on the pump, and you want to clean that regularly. I do this about once a month, and the way I clean it, I actually don't really disconnect the pump at all. I let it clean itself in a way. So I just remove the pump out of my ATO reservoir, and I put it in a container of about 50-50 fresh water and vinegar. So you see, actually, I didn't have that much deposit on the pump itself, but you did see there was deposit on the tubing. And what I'm doing right now, it's a bit hard to film, but I'm retrieving the line, that black tubing that's going into my tank, and I'm gonna bring that back and put it into the bucket. And what I do is I move up the water level sensor in my sump, and that tricks the osmolator into thinking that my water is too low in the sump, and it will turn on the pump. And so the pump will suck out the vinegar and clean the tubing, and it will empty into the same bucket. So I'm essentially running the pump on a self-cleaning mode. And I do this for about 15 minutes. And after that 15-minute cycle, the tubing is pretty clear. So I inspect the tubing, and if it needs another 15 minutes, then I give it another 15 minutes. And that's all I do to make sure that the pump and the tubing is clear. I run this once. You can see here the tubing, all the calcium deposit that you saw is now gone. In addition to cleaning your ATO pump, you also are going to want to clean your return pump and your skimmer often, because calc will lead to a lot of deposits. And so I do this in the same way, just soak the return pump and the skimmer pump in vinegar, and then I clean it out with a brush every 6 months. Okay, I wanted to also talk about one benefit of using calc, which is raising your pH. So Kalkwasser is calcium hydroxide. When you add it to the tank, the hydroxide will react with any carbon dioxide in your water to form bicarbonate. And by removing carbon dioxide, it will actually boost your pH. So this is a graph of my pH, and you see that I have a regular cycle where I go from pH of about 8.2, 8.3 when at the end of the day, to about 8.1, 8.15 at night. And this is great. Before I used to use calc, my pH was around 7.8, 7.9. So higher pH is a good thing in terms of improving calcification rates of corals. But you do have to be careful that your ATO doesn't add a lot of calc into the tank, which could raise pH to unacceptable levels. And so I have some code here. I have a pH probe, and what this code does that's highlighted is it shuts off the automatic top off whenever the pH reaches above 8.45. As a precaution, you don't want to have your automatic top off dump a lot of Kalkwasser, raise the pH way above 8.5 or 6, and cause damage to your tank. And on the topic of pH, the best way to use Kalkwasser in your automatic top-off is if the automatic top-off is it's turned on during the entire 24-hour period, where it's gradually topping off your tank. You don't want to only turn off your top-off once a day, because that will just dump way too much calc into your system, and it will elevate the pH above acceptable levels. One other thing to consider is that if you're going away on vacation a lot, Kalkwasser in your automatic top-off may not be the best for you. The reason for that is often when you go away on vacation and nobody's in your house, the calcium dioxide levels in your home are going to decrease, and with the Kalkwasser, that will lead to very high pH in your tank. So I'm giving you an example here. We're looking at the pH profile in my tank before I went on vacation on the March break, and you see it's within the acceptable range, 40 to 8.4 to 8.2. But here on I think March 13, I went away on vacation, and you could see that very quickly the CO2 in my tank dropped because I'm not in the house breathing carbon dioxide. And in combination with the Kalkwasser, the hydroxide removing whatever CO2 is left in the water, my pH quickly rose above acceptable levels. So, this wasn't a big deal because I did have this line of code to turn off the automatic top off if the pH went above 8.5, but that also means that my salinity is now increasing. So just something to consider if you're away from your tank for very long periods of time. Kalkwasser in the automatic top off may not be the best solution for you. Okay, so just in summary on the use of Kalkwasser in your automatic top off, so some of the advantages is that Kalkwasser is very cheap, so it's dollar per dollar. It's one of the cheapest way to maintain calcium and alkalinity in your tank. It's fairly easy to use. You just make these jugs of water and you're ready to go. And it does enhance pH, and if you suffer from low pH because of carbon dioxide buildup in your house and in your tank, then Kalkwasser will help increase your tank to acceptable levels, and that will often be associated with higher rates of coral calcification and growth. So the disadvantages is it is kind of a dangerous chemical. You want to treat it with caution. You want to use your personal protective equipment. It is not precise. Obviously, dosing calc via the automatic top off will all depend on your evaporation rates, and that will vary from day to day and actually season to season. So I get a big shift of how often I use my top off water when I go from heating the house in the winter to cooling it in the summer. It might not be sufficient for all of your calcium and alkalinity needs. So if you have an LPS system, then you can probably use calc as your main and only top off calcium and alkalinity supplementation. But for me, I still have to dose 2-part, and it's totally fine to mix Kalkwasser and 2-part. You do want to make sure that you have measures in place to prevent your Kalkwasser from increasing the pH in your tank above acceptable levels, and it might not be the best solution for you if you travel a lot. So that's it, guys. Let me know what you think. If you use Kalkwasser, please let me know your experiences with it, and if there's anything that you do differently that I don't. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and see you around.